One more problem to solve, and we're going to solve it exactly the same way. Click 1. Click 1 again, the same thing happens again. We want to prevent that from happening. We want to disable these buttons so they can't be clicked over and over again, because they're already there. If they're there, we shouldn't have to have them be able to click again. So I set up a little variable, and this one's called current button. So I have one for current section, now one for current button. And there are cooler ways of doing this, but this way is going to work fine. So I'm going to set current button to equal the button that calls this function, which in this case is button 1. I could say button 1, or I could grab it from that event. So event current target as movie clip, because we specified this variable as a movie clip up here, and can't do that unless we tell it. So essentially we're just saying the button that clicked this, set that as current button. Then we want to put a condition on this and say if current button does not equal event current target, and now I didn't put that as movie clip because it's not required once it's set, which is kind of silly, but that's the case. This should prevent that from working. At least twice. So there, click it again, no problem. So that same bit, and since I didn't use button 1, it's a much easier copy and paste because it's all generic, which is nice. So let's see if that works for button 2. Can't click it more than once. Click it fine, can't click it more than once. And we can use that to turn that blue or whatever. So that's the system. It's a pretty simplified version of that, but it works. So give that a try. Alright, I wanted to give you an example of how I would set up my application. Pretty simple. Same bit. I'd have my folders separated out on my Finder, Source, Assets, Deploy, Archive. Here's my main timeline, and attached to that would be my document class. This is an Air app. And instead of putting everything on the main timeline, I would put everything in a separate movie clip. Remember that movie clips are independent entities and should be considered main timelines in their own right. So they're independent objects that you can attach classes to, etc. So rather than doing everything on the main, I would do something contained in this. That way I could manipulate it. For example, if I'm doing a vertical piece, I want to be able to tilt it horizontally or scale it down so I can see it when I'm testing. To attach a class to an object, you just create the movie clip, and then you get information, and then under Advanced you create the connection to the class. You can create the class beforehand, or you can just press this pencil and give it the right path, which would be the name of the application, and then the name of the class, which I'm calling this application. Then you click that pencil, and it would create the class, and you would save it in the right folder. So you're going to make sure that that's in source called this time swoop, and then it's called application. Once that's established, I can show you how that application's set up. I want this to be moving up as my timeline, so that's a movie clip inside application. On the timeline, I've masked it out with a mask, so this is masking that. And I want to tween that up when I press these buttons. These are also in application. So movie clip, mask, etc. Alright, I've set up a little class here, or a little method, I mean, to set up my navigation, which essentially adds the event listener to the buttons. I would put all my listeners in this little method, and then here's the method I'd call for clicking button 1. So let me take that out here. So I want to tween this up and down, and I guess I could timeline it, or I could try to work the code, but I recommend you use tween light. So in my COM folder, I've downloaded the green sock tween light package with all the classes here. Essentially, you just include it, import COM green sock tween light. Get rid of that for a sec. And then when we click button 1, we just say tween light to what target. So if I go back to my application, I want to tween this thing, and it's called timeMC. So timeMC, how long do I want to take? Let's just say 1 second, and then there are optional vars that can be passed. So it needs 3 arguments: what to tween, how long, and then the optional vars. So this optional var, it needs to know where to go, and so we specify I want it to adjust its Y. I can put multiples in there if I wanted to. I can even put effects, which is pretty cool. And essentially I want this time to end up, say, here. You'll want to be more precise. So I want the Y to be roughly 286. So let's undo that, so that's down there. So I want the Y to be to 286. So I'm tweening this timeline in 1 second to Y286. Let's test that. And there it goes. So now that that's working, you should definitely put eases in your tweens so it looks more natural. So I'm going to import from the green sock, not the font stock, but the green sock, the ease, and you can tweeze them. You can import them all by putting a little fuzzy ball there, or I'm just going to choose one and say back. So down here, my tween, that's an optional var. Say ease, and then back, and then ease in and ease out, just like that. So there's a little backup there. Now, most likely you'll want something to happen once that gets there. So what I recommend you do is when it gets there, that's when you load an item from the library, rather than having it on the main timeline, gobbling up memory that it doesn't need. I recommend just going ahead and adding that at that point. So first we have to mark that point with the on complete. And then we just say, okay, so launch section 1. So we want to call a function called launch section 1. A little copy and paste here. No arguments. Let's just go ahead and say trace, just to see if that's working. Now I've gotten this thing to do full screen, so I'll have to escape to see that trace. So it's got there, and it says launch section 1. Now that that's doing that, let's figure out how to get something on the stage. So I've created in my library a movie clip called section 1. Here it is. And to see what it would look like, I went ahead and made a template layer in Flash. Anything on this template layer is not going to get exported. So I can have it on the stage and see what it looks like in context, but not have it gobble up memory. For this, you can attach a class to it, just like we've done with the application, but for this purpose, we want to say export for action script. I have a section 1 class associated, but it's not required. I can just use the movie clip class, but we want that exported out, and we refer to it by name, and I've called this section 1. So back to my application class. So once that gets there, I want to go ahead and create an instance of that section 1. So I'm going to call this section 1. So you don't want to confuse the var name with the class name. So this is like giving it an instance name. So I want to say equals new section 1. Then I want to add that. Add child. So I'm going to add it to the application movie clip. And I'm adding the variable name, not the name of the class. So this allows us to make multiple instances of the same movie clip. So let's see if that worked. Now there it is. So I want to make sure it's in the right spot. So you do that by going back here and figuring out what the XY should be. So say 660 by 530. I like rounding. So we just set the X and Y of this SC1. X equals 660. And I don't remember. 530. And section 1 Y equals 530. So that should put it in the right spot. There it is.